Ever wondered how people kept food fresh before electricity? In medieval times, there were no fridges, no takeout, and definitely no ketchup bottles. So when winter came knocking, people had to get creative, really creative. Their kitchens were smoky, chaotic, and full of surprises. Meats hanging from beams, herbs dangling everywhere, and enough salt to rival the ocean. These were the heart of every home, warm, loud, and smelling like, well, centuries of survival. The magic ingredient? Salt. So valuable that Roman soldiers were literally paid in it. That's where the word salary comes from. Medieval merchants in Venice even built fortunes trading the stuff. Forget tech billionaires. Salt barons were the original power players. To preserve meat, they'd rub it with mountains of salt, sometimes 20% of its weight. It would dry up and shrink, turning into something like medieval beef jerky. One 13th century cookbook advised, "Salt it until it looks like snow." Sounds poetic, and probably very, very salty. But salt wasn't cheap. A pound could cost a week's wages. Some villages traded entire flocks of sheep just for enough to survive the winter. So when salt ran low, they turned to smoke. Literally. Medieval kitchens doubled as smokehouses. The air was so thick that everyone probably smelled like bacon 24/7. Not that anyone complained. They hung meat and fish high in the rafters, letting oak or cherry wood smoke work its magic. Different woods gave different flavors. Oak for beef, apple for pork, cherry for poultry. Even after 600 years, archaeologists say old smokehouse beams still smell smoky. Now that's commitment. And when they weren't smoking food, they were freezing it. The natural way. Wealthy nobles built underground ice houses, basically medieval freezers that held up to 75 tons of ice. Servants collected snow in winter, packing it with sawdust for insulation. Some of these ice houses kept ice frozen for 2 years. Imagine explaining that to your refrigerator repair guy. Those without ice bunkers made do with caves and cellars, nature's refrigerators. Cool, dark, and perfect for storing cheese, vegetables, and of course, beer. Monks were especially good at that part. When all else failed, they turned to the simplest trick of all, drying. They dried everything, meat, herbs, apples, even fish so hard you could probably build a wall with it. They hung strings of food from rafters like medieval Christmas decorations, or stacked fruit towers that held thousands of pounds at once. If you dropped your dried beef and it bounced, you'd done it right. If it shattered, congratulations, you'd invented a weapon. But not everything was about smoke and salt. Some foods needed a more flavorful solution, vinegar and fermentation. They pickled everything that didn't run away first. Cabbage, cucumbers, even fish. Medieval monks wrote poems about pickling. One monastery picked over 15,000 eggs in a single year. Imagine being the monk whose hands smelled like vinegar forever. Fermentation wasn't just about food, it was medicine. Sauerkraut and pickled veggies helped prevent scurvy long before vitamin supplements existed. Turns out those barrels of funky-smelling cabbage were lifesavers. Then there was honey, nature's eternal preservative. It never goes bad. They poured it over fruits, meats, and even whole birds. Some nobles preserved peacocks in honey just to show off. Beekeepers were medieval VIPs, paid more than cooks and allowed to trespass if chasing their bees. Now that's job dedication. And finally, the sweetest method of all, alcohol. Medieval people figured out that soaking food in wine or beer kept it from spoiling. They preserved everything from cherries to chickens in barrels of booze. Some taverns even served wine eggs. Yes, eggs floating in wine. One unlucky guy tried to eat 3 on a dare and ended up singing in Latin, a language he didn't know. So the next time you open your fridge, remember, your medieval ancestors managed to preserve food without electricity, plastic wrap, or Uber Eats. They used salt, smoke, snow, vinegar, honey, and a good bit of alcohol. And somehow they made it work, because in the Middle Ages, dinner wasn't just food, it was survival, with a side of creativity.